The red exit sign at the end of the corridor blinked like a tired heartbeat while the city burned gold beyond the glass. In the conference room, Caleb Voss straightened his tie and studied his reflection in the window, as if the skyline were a mirror built to flatter him. He was about to close the deal of the decade, and he loved that the world could see him doing it. Ava Brooks did not look at the view. She looked at angles. She was the smallest person in the room, a quiet security lead in a charcoal polo who moved like a shadow with a task. 6 chairs, 2 doors, a window big enough to swallow the horizon. She traced the sight lines in her head and slid 1 step closer to Caleb. "Sir, please step away from the glass," she said. He smiled the way rich men smile when they assume the universe is on their payroll. "It's fine, Brooks. We're about to sign." "Then sign from here." Her voice carried no fear, only urgency. "Right now." A skinny line of rope appeared outside, drifting down the height of the building like a strand of night. Another line fell beside it. The first crack spread across the glass like a frost pattern. Then the window came apart. Air blasted the table, paper turned to snow, and a string of polite little pops stitched the wood where Caleb's chest had been a second earlier. Ava did not freeze. She dragged Caleb behind the table and shoved it on its side to build a wedge of cover. A masked figure swung through the shattered frame, weapon raised. Ava changed her level, stole the angle, and fired twice. The man folded into the carpet, surprised to be done. A second silhouette rolled at the threshold. Ava snapped the sprinkler head above him. Water fell like a curtain, killing lasers and turning the room into rain. "Move," she said to the board. "Hands on the CEO. Crawl." She slashed a zip tie and cuffed the second intruder to the leg of a chair, then cut across the room for a better line. A third attacker tried the interior hall. She met him on his reload, levered his wrist, and sent his weapon skittering across the wet floor. Caleb blinked, his power finally meeting physics. "Who are you?" he asked, voice thin. Ava kept her eyes on the window where the ropes swung like dead snakes. "Your security," she said, "and the only reason you're still the headline of your own story. If that opening pulled you into the room, subscribe now so you don't miss what really went down upstairs." 3 hours earlier, the building smelled like coffee and rain and victory. Atlas Quanta had built Q-Shield, a post-quantum security platform that promised to lock tomorrow's computers out of today's secrets. Every investor with a pulse wanted a piece. Every competitor who didn't have a conscience wanted Caleb Voss to fail in public. Ava clocked in at 5 because she always did. The overnight guard nodded at her with the sleepy respect people reserve for someone who solves problems they never see. She walked the stairs instead of the elevator and traced the emergency routes with the same calm she used to fold laundry. The job taught you to love boring things. Hinges that didn't squeak, locks that actually latched, windows that behaved like windows and not invitations. People underestimated her. They saw height and hair and a soft voice and assumed she took orders. She let them. A woman who is underestimated is a woman who can work in plain sight. Caleb had tested her the first week, standing with his toes on the edge of the glass as if gravity had been grandfathered out of his lease. "You look young," he'd said, amused by his own observation. "I look like I know what I'm doing," she replied, and then proved it every day. Her resume said she'd bounced through a few security firms after leaving law enforcement. It didn't mention the credentials she kept in a second wallet or the handler who called himself Overlord because the government lacks a sense of humor. It didn't mention the quiet request from the bureau, keep the contract, watch the building. There are hands reaching for Q-Shield that don't appear on any corporate org chart. The first clue had been smell, machine oil on a garage door handle where there shouldn't have been any. The second clue had been sound, the faint tick of a latch that had been nudged, then set back to look untouched. The third clue had been a text, a single line from a disposable phone towered 3 blocks away. Window, 32nd floor. Before signatures, Her handler wanted patience. "Let them reach," he said. "We watch the hand." "They'll cut it off if they get it," Ava said. She didn't raise her voice. She just picked her battles and then refused to lose them. By late afternoon, the clouds had drifted in like a slow parade of gray animals. The investors arrived in a fragrance of leather briefcases and old money. Caleb rolled in late because that was his style. He was not cruel, only convinced that gravity owed him courtesy. He nodded at Ava as he passed, the hello you give to furniture that happens to have a face. She followed him into the conference room and moved him 5 inches left for reasons she didn't explain. That small obedience would become the most expensive decision he never argued with. The blast of air from the broken window spun a flurry of paper through the room like frightened birds. The first intruder lay still. The second strained against the tie, eyes blinking under a film of water. The third cursed in the hallway where Ava had left him, separated from his weapon. Somewhere below, the building alarms woke up and began to tell the city a story it didn't want to hear. "Get the door," Ava said to the one board member who could still make his hands work. He slid the bolt with a sound that felt too small for what it accomplished. She checked the edges, searched for a fourth shadow, and found instead the echo of someone moving fast on the stairwell. Not an attacker. A runner. Someone who knew to leave before police turned the building into a funnel. Caleb tried to stand. She put a hand on his shoulder without looking at him. "No. I have to save the deal," he said, coughing. "They can't see me like this." "They already saw you alive," she said. "That's the only part that matters tonight." The runner on the stairs made a decision 2 floors down. The sound of retreat turned toward the roof. Ava weighed options quickly. Engage and risk the room. Hold and risk the trail going cold. She looked at the board, a half circle of suits who had lost the plot of their own evening, and calculated the distance from the table to the hall, to the stairwell, to the roof. She saw it the way a chess player sees the endgame 3 moves early. "Stay with him," she told the trembling board member. "If he stands, push him back down. If he argues, tell him the person with the gun decides the plan." She slid into the hall, scooped the attacker's dropped weapon without breaking stride, and hit the stairs. Her shoes were quiet. Her breath was a metronome. On the 29th landing, she saw a wet footprint that didn't belong to her. On the 31st, she heard the scrape of a door. She palmed the bar and stepped into wind. The roof was an unraveled box of shadows. 2 ropes dragged against the parapet in the breeze. A figure in dark clothes tore at a carabiner with panicked hands, then froze when he saw her. "Don't," she said. The word was not loud, only absolute. He ran anyway. She caught him at the knee and turned his momentum into surrender. He hit the gravel, rolled, and finally lay still, more tired than beaten. "I'm just paid to set lines," he said as she cuffed him. "I didn't shoot anybody." "You rigged the front door," she said. "That makes you inside." She pulled his phone. The messages told a story in ugly shorthand. 3 shooters, 1 rigger, 1 handler off-site. Payment promised the moment the job site went radio silent. She dragged him to the stairwell and handed him to the first pair of uniforms, who arrived panting and eager. Back in the conference room, Caleb had regained the ability to perform outrage. He wanted to call the network. He wanted statements and control. He wanted to be the man he was 10 minutes ago. "Don't go downstairs," Ava told him. "They need the scene. Also, the cameras will make this about you. Tonight it isn't." His voice softened, but only enough to fit regret through it. "Who is it about then?" "The people who almost had to call your family," she said, "and the person who ordered the ropes." Police swarmed, sealed, catalogued. The restrained intruder stared at the carpet and refused to talk. The dead one stayed dead. The fire system shut itself off and left a chilled damp that made everyone feel like a fever had finally broken. Overlord arrived quietly and took a corner. He wore the kind of suit you forget when you try to describe it later. "You did good work," he said when the room thinned. But I told you to watch the hand, not break the wrist. The hand reached for my client's throat, she said. I removed it. He didn't argue. He showed her a photo on his phone. A woman in a severe bob, conservative blouse, smile that looked like it had been practiced in elevators. She's an executive assistant in Caleb's office, he said. Too clean, too new. Travels through spaces she doesn't belong in without being seen. We think she's the handler's eyes on the inside. Ava remembered the woman's habit of replacing water bottles before they were empty, of resetting chairs by the inch, of standing at open doors like a decorative plant. Invisible people see everything. Invisible people can also move anything they like while the room refuses to notice. Where is she now? Ava asked. Leaving, said a uniform from the doorway, radio pressed to his shoulder. Elevator just hit the lobby. She's got a tote and a face like she wants to cry in private. Ava was moving before the sentence finished. She preferred stares to stories, action to emotion. In the lobby, the assistant stood in front of a revolving door, tote on her shoulder, phone in her hand like a passport. Ava approached from the side where people rarely look. You forgot to sign out, she said. The assistant blinked a believable blink. It's chaos upstairs. I didn't want to be in the way. You're never in the way, Ava said. You're in the center. That's why the building works when you're here. Flattery wobbled the woman's poise. People who run the world from the margins don't hear that often. Thank you, she said, almost shy. Also, Ava said, you swapped the visitor badges today. A rigger rode the freight elevator without a photo. The security desk thinks they printed it wrong. They didn't. The assistant picked the wrong strategy. She smiled. If you want to write me up, I'll take it. I'm not writing you up, Ava said. I'm reading you your rights. The smile cracked. The phone in the tote lit up with a message that announced itself with a greedy little buzz. Ava took it gently and looked at the screen. A single line glowed on a locked screen. Status. The reply bubble had already formed, the unsent letters waiting like a confession that wanted a mouth. The woman exhaled as if her lungs had been holding the building up. You don't understand, she said. They promised me I'd be fine. Everyone who says that to you is lying, Ava said. She cuffed the assistant's wrists, not rough, just final, and walked her back through security where the cameras recorded a different headline than the one Caleb had wanted. If you're here for grounded, character-first thrillers with real stakes, hit subscribe and drop a quick comment with your favorite moment so far. By midnight, the building had sobered. The dead were accounted for, the living had stopped shaking, and the evidence bags made little paper sounds like whispered apologies. Caleb sat in his office with an emergency blanket around his shoulders because someone who actually understood shock had handed it to him and then refused to take it back. He had made 3 phone calls since the window broke, one to legal, one to PR, and one to a person he called just to hear a voice that wasn't involved. Ava stood at the window that hadn't shattered, watching the river process the city lights into a ribbon. Overlord leaned against the wall and read through the assistant's messages with a face that never changed. She was the spotter, he said. She mapped routines, photographed badges, timed the guard rotations, and gave the handler the sign when the investors were in their chairs. Payment was staged through a charity with a name designed to make you feel cynical. Whoever ordered this wanted you embarrassed and broken at the same time. Caleb set the blanket aside and approached Ava like someone approaching the truth for the first time. You saved my life, he said, and the sentence sounded new in his mouth. I did my job, she answered. Your job is to stand by the door and look invisible, he said, surprising himself with the pettiness baked into the words. You did more than that. She turned from the glass. My job is to make sure the people who go home tonight get to decide what tomorrow looks like. He nodded slowly, chastened without being humiliated. Then will you do one more thing for me? No statements tonight, she said. No cameras, no victory laps. You'll tempt fate and embarrass your own fear. Go home, sit with what happened, and come back human. That wasn't what I was going to ask. He almost smiled. But fair. He extended his hand. Thank you, Ms. Brooks. She shook it. His grip was less certain than the market believed. You're welcome, Mr. Voss. He hesitated in the doorway. You said earlier that the only part that mattered tonight was that they saw me alive. Why would someone risk this much to make me fail in public? Because humiliation travels farther than tragedy, she said. Because money is a blunt instrument, but shame is a scalpel. Someone was carving. He left without arguing. Overlord watched him go. You could run a detail for heads of state with the way you handle men like that. I handle people, she said. Men are a subset. The bureau took the assistant, and the assistant took a plea. She told them a name they could use and a network they could prosecute. The rigger traded tools for testimony and drew a line from a rival consortium to a contractor who assembled teams like this for hire. The surviving intruder asked for a lawyer and then asked for a doctor and then stopped asking for anything at all. The building replaced the window with one that would look new in the morning and remembered nothing of the night except the indentations in the carpet where fear had taken a seat. A week later, Caleb walked into the conference room with a paper cup of coffee he poured himself. He didn't stand too close to the window. He didn't make a speech before the meeting. He placed the contract on the table and looked at Ava, not through her. Are we secure? He asked. As secure as honesty allows, she said. If you want zero risk, cancel the future. He laughed, and this time the sound included her. Sign here? You sign, she said. I'll watch the doors. The deal closed, not with fireworks or a ticker, with pens and paper and people determined to be better than the last week had tried to make them. Caleb stepped into the hall afterward and found Ava waiting with the faintest shadow of a smile. Dinner, he said, to say thank you. Professional boundaries, she said, kind but firm. Send a bonus to the lowest paid person on your floor and fix the blind spot in the stairwell camera. That's how you thank me. He absorbed the correction. Done. He paused. If you ever leave this job, where do you go? I don't leave, she said. I finish. She walked away, and the building seemed to walk with her, grateful to be seen by someone who understood what it took for a structure to stand. If this ending gave you a breath you didn't know you were holding, subscribe and tell me in the comments which moment turned the story for you. Your feedback shapes the next case.